Hi, I'm Rick Harsch, the author of The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas and the chief editor of coronasamas.press. Today I'm going to talk about The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas through the lens of gender studies, or something like that. We're going to talk about gender in The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas. You can skip this in 3 days. What would you do if you're reading a book and it seems like it's mostly about men, and the first woman you come across is sitting on one of the men's laps. She's dressed very sexy, and the man's kind of jiggling around with her boobie during a poker game. And then the next woman you meet, the men nickname Picasso tits because her nipples are off to the side, and they seem to be in different places at different times. And then the next woman of significance that you meet is the nastiest academic wench on either side of the Mississippi. And you're seeing her through the lens of a husband who's fed up with her. I think probably you might put that book down. Most people don't, but I know one person who in all good faith put it down, and he actually told me that Picasso tits was it. He couldn't take it beyond that. Well, that's The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas, which is a book that is as fervently anti-patriarchy as any book you'll ever read. And so I want to discuss this in terms of gender. Now, first thing I want to say is I've known a lot of men and women who behaved as the definitely objectified woman early on. You don't get to know much about her. There's even some talk, or one of her friend, she sleeps at his house, and he says to this new guy he met, you can fuck her if you want. But we don't know if they're serious. And so you go on, and she never appears again in the book. There is no sex with her, but there is a description of her body parts. And then the woman that's known as Picasso tits is in Belgium. She's a painter, and at one point she says, "I know you guys call me Picasso tits." She doesn't mind. She's actually in love with both of them, and both are in love with her, but she chooses one early on, and that is respected. But what you'll never know if you get disgusted and don't read on is that actually she is the I don't want to say moral center of the book, but she's the most deeply sane person in a book about the United States, probably because she's female, a painter, and is from Europe. Probably. We don't know. We just follow her as she behaves in the book. The academic figure is actually based on someone, and how she's presented is actually quite accurate. This is something that I came across at the University of Iowa in the poetry section of the Iowa Writers Workshop. One of the most self-centered, nasty, egotistical people I've ever met. And I could relate some tales that would support that. Her daughter is also in the book, but the daughter is sort of she's not really she's just estranged from the men, and that makes sense actually. But then the book goes on, and it's a man's world. It's a man's creation. It talks about, we start, Eddie Vegas has the people I'm talking about now are like more or less current characters, but the book has another half which traces the family line of one of these two young men. And it starts with great 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 grandfather in the days of the fur traders. He actually was from his family was Mississippi traders, and he had this grandiose idea to go out west. And when he got to the West Coast, he would create a trade situation for whalers that failed and came in without whales. He would load them with fur and send them back. It was a pretty good idea, but he kind of was in over his head, and he ended up in getting attacked by a bear. I wrote that before that goddamn Leonardo DiCaprio film, which Hollywoodized it, and I moved it about 1,500 miles, so it would be where I wanted it to be in Oregon, near Oregon, Idaho, and but I actually get deeper into what really happened, and I don't make up anybody related to the guy. Hugh Glass was his name. I think in the movie they gave him a son. But his whole motivation was he was really upset that the people who left him to die took his rifle. That's would be neither here nor there, but he ends up marrying an Indian woman, a Native American, a whatever we call them today. But in the book, she's an Injun, because that's the language that's used at that time. There's a lot of mountain man talk, and there's some fun stuff with language with the Indians, various tribes trying to talk to the white men trying to talk to them. The Indians pick up lots of different languages because they do a lot of trading with people. Back then, you had people from a lot of different European countries in the fur trade, and so you have a sort of natural Esperanto, and I have a lot of fun with that. So here you got the female Injun, and she's followed throughout her life, and she's probably one of the most admirable and interesting characters in the book. It is through her lens that we see some of the most grotesque massacres visited upon Native Americans by the white man. And so there you have a very significant female character, but, you know, let's leave that for a second. The next is this guy's grandmother and great-grandmother, I think, maybe. And I based this one on a relative of mine who was the first woman in Wyoming to own and operate a taxi service in Cheyenne, Wyoming. But this is in Nevada because I need this to be in Nevada, and so she's in Nevada. But she's got a particular interest in history and not in remarriage. And her husband bites it. Anyway, so she talks a lot of history in the book, and so you get a great deal of information from her. And so when you step back after the end of the book, if you understand what, and I think you will, what I do with Rabelaisian lists in the book. I love the Rabelaisian list, and how I use it in the book is the first Rabelaisian list is complete Rabelaisian list, just inspired nonsense with a sort of Marx Brothers type Dada connection to the content of the book. But gradually, the lists become more and more accurate until the final list, um, which is a very powerful one, and it basically, um, ex- in if you understand phallic imagery, which you probably do, uh, you understand is we're striking at the patriarchal disaster that was created in the United States. Now, there are scenes in Vietnam where there are no women, um, and there are various reasons for that. This is not meant, this is not written through the lens of gender studies or gender conditions. In fact, the apotheosis, um, the grand theme of patriarchy, is incidental. It's just that that is the way our world is. And if you're going to, like, if you're going to study fascism in Europe, um, you're going to write an anti-fascist, anti-patriarchal book. And so, there's just no way about it. If you're going to study the wreckage of the United States and what it's visited upon the world, you're studying patriarchy, whether you like it or not. Now, the characters, well, the first one, the objectified one, that's actually a pretty realistic portrayal of the kind of things that occur in university settings. We maybe not, but I've known many men and women who just are very free with their bodies, and it's not necessarily a sexual matter. It's just a freedom matter. I've also known couples that love to talk dirty in front of people, and even act dirty in front of in public, and they were always a lot of fun. They were very free spirited, and generally monogamous. And as far as I knew. Anyway, I wasn't invited to any sex parties with people like that, but I knew a lot of people like that. And also, I was at university in the 70s, and sex was much more, well, nobody was worried about anything but the minor venereals, crabs and such. But anyway, so, but then you get Picasso Tits. She's a complex character. And why is she called Picasso Tits? Well, that's my habit of paying homage to Roberto Arlt, who has the melancholy whore, the melancholy ruffian, the lame whore. He liked to give nicknames, and I've been doing that for years. It's, hats off to you, Roberto, because you understood what was coming in this world after World War One, and so. And also, it was based on a woman I briefly met in Belgium, and the physical nature of her was exactly what I described, and so it was more or less accurate. But the person I made her out to be was necessary for whatever reason the book formed into what it is, and um, her role in it was a sort of counterpoint to that of the men. The two young men are good guys. They're really good guys, or they want to be. And but they're limited by, to a slight degree, by the lunacy that the United States bestows upon its citizens, and that you have to really work hard to evade or escape or embrace, depending on your situation. So, and then the rest of it, I never thought, I never think, what are we going to do about gender in this book? but there is gender, and I'm a man writing, and it's really funny because I think you're more wise fiction personae will tell you you've got to write everybody, anybody. You can't refrain from writing. You can't have a book without any black people because you're white. You can't eliminate anybody from your book because you're not them, or all you're going to do is write, Saul Bellow at the university novels, or whoever. There's been way too many university professor novels by great writers who were restricted by that. Now, of course, some are great, like The Tunnel by William Gass. He's definitely writing about what he knows, but he really tunnels into it, and you get a remarkable novel. But the point is that as a writer, you have to be free, and if you have a man in your book, which you will if you don't have anybody else, unless it's an animal novel, and those usually suck. But unless it's a monkey novel novels are great. But I'm working on one right now. The fact is, men like women and want women, and I think I'm not talking about. I just learned a new word, incel, and that's the most grotesque word I've come across in recent memory. It means involuntary celibate, meaning a man who wants to fuck women but they won't, and so they have now some sort of movement of incels. I mean, this is back. You get Greeks writing about this kind of thing, ancient Greeks, about the troubles with women, and but you also get the women talking about the troubles with men. See Lysistrata, but from my experience, when I got woman problems, if I could say it that way, and I just did, I go to the bar and I talk to the boys, or a boy, until they get sick of talking to me. I've never considered myself anything other than a human being, and when I'm a man in a bar talking about my latest trouble with women, I'm just Rick, and it's just that you can write about that. You can write about that, but you cannot become, if you're sane, you cannot become Rick the victim. You have to understand how you fit into the human scheme of things, and examine yourself. And I don't know. As for the incel bullshit, James Allen McPherson was a professor of mine, and we got to know each other very well. And I'll never forget what he told me one time in the mid-'90s. He said, "We don't need women anymore. We got VCRs." And of course, he was being sardonic, but that's what you got to tell the incel people is, you got internet. If you can't figure out another way, like make something of yourself that's attractive to someone of the female gender, then just stick to the internet. But you can't go driving through crowds of people in Toronto or whatever shit like that. But anyway, it's going to happen. It's going to happen because it's a patriarchy. Canada as well. But that's my story about gender in The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas. This is my second booktube on a book by Coronasamas.press. This is 20 euros plus postage. It's 700 some pages. Look up reviews and check out videos by Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse and by Leaf, and so on. It's been a pleasure. This is Off the Cuff. Pardon me for any dull moments. And dullardry is something that I find comes with age. So if I'm dull now, wait till you see me tomorrow. Thank you.